Hi, everybody. I was thinking of trying something a little different in preparation for Tisha B'Av. And the idea is, the goal is to get something practical moving in our personal lives and ultimately in the whole world. And what I was thinking is pretty much, I wanted to, this is quite possibly, I'm open to a frank conversation at some point about, meaning it should be, meaning we could get to the point that it's a shared conversation, but the point is that really, that this has to be practical, because Tisha B'Av is pretty much, it's one of the most, this season of Churban and Bein HaMitzarim and Churban, destruction, and Aveilus, meaning this time of the year we have, in some ways, is very unique and very special from all the other times of the year, because it's the most practical. I'll tell you what I mean. That all the other holidays, for example, we have mitzvahs to do, and they commemorate things that we have in the bag. Meaning Pesach happens. That's part of the essential nature of reality now. It's part of who we are, and Sukkot and Shavuos, and all the times of the year really that don't focus on Churban are times that we have mitzvahs to do, and that's the avodah. And of course, there are deeper things to connect to, etc. But we have mitzvahs, and really, this time, really, the purpose of this time that we have is primarily, it's the only time we have to really focus on reality the way it is. It's the time that we have to focus on reality the way it is and struggle with practically what to do about it. Meaning, we don't take, just like we take Pesach for granted that Pesach happened. Freedom is real. Tisha B'Av does not mean that the things that Tisha B'Av is known for, that they are cemented and they are real. Rather, we want to change them. Tisha B'Av is a time that we contemplate, we look really at our generation, where we are today, with the goal in mind, and say, we are so short. We have to come up with something practically. It's a time to deal with reality as is. You don't have that really by any other time of year. And therefore it behooves us as a people to mobilize ourselves, whether it's individually in our own personal lives or as Am Yisrael and ultimately humanity, to actually address that reality. And this raises a lot of questions, because a lot of these things are things beyond what we could do. It depends on how you identify the problems. But anyway, I just wanted to say, starting off, that this is really, our whole outlook has to be that the avodah here is not about, this very specific avodah of this time is that Am Yisrael is meant to think about something differently, think about the world differently in a way that makes a change. This is a practical arena for us to do something. So, we've talked about the eyes until now, Einayim, and how the months of Tammuz and Av are represented by the Einayim. And one of the crucial things about this remnants of the Einayim is that this is a time that we need to change our perspective. It's really how we see things that can allow for an approach to change things. So that's really the main idea. So, we read Eicha, Megillah says Eicha on Tisha B'Av, and Eicha literally means, Rashi says that it's a word of kina, of lamentation. It's like saying, whoa, how tragic. And what's fascinating is that the first time that the word Eicha appears, it appears early in the Chumash as a different word, ayeka. Right? The pasuk says, "Vayishmeu es kol Adonai Elohim mishalech bagam leruach hayom," and they heard, Adam and Chava heard the sound, the voice of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei Elokim traveling through the garden. We mentioned this pasuk by the Medrash of Ba'asi Lagani, the pasuk in Shir Shir, right? That the voice of Hashem, which in that Medrash represents the Shekhinah, was mishalech bagan. It was traveling in the garden, the Ruach Hayom, according to the spirit of the day. Meaning, depending on what prevailed in the spirit of the day, that's the function, how much the Shekhinah is present, right? Vayitchabeh ha'adam li'ishto, and Adam and his wife, they hid, mipnei Adonai Elohim, from the face of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei Elokim, b'toch Eitz Hagan, within the forest of the garden. Vayikra Adonai Elohim ha'adam, and Yud-Kei Vav-Kei Elokim called out to the human. Vayomer lo, and he said, Ayeka, where are you? And we know the significance of that, right? Ayeka is always a check. Hashem saying, I expected you to be in this place. I can't see you. Where are you? Call back to me, right? And to me, the relationship between Echa and Ayeka means that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you an Echa, it's an opportunity, really what it is, it's in a way for you to hear Ayeka. It's a call for Ayeka. So the Echa, the tragedy of the Korban, is essentially Hashem asking us, where are you? We have to respond, right? We have to ask ourselves, where are we? And respond. That's the Avodah, okay? So the Baal Shem Tov says on the pasuk, we mentioned this pasuk before also, the pasuk that establishes the concept of between the narrows, the period of 3 weeks. It says in Echa, it says, Kol Rodfea, all that pursued her, Hisigua, they apprehended her, Ben Hamtzarim, between the straits, between the narrows. And the Baal Shem Tov says that this is a reference to the Shekhinah and a prescription for you. Everybody who chased after her, every individual who was looking for her, for the Shekhinah, Hisigua, they found her Ben Hamtzarim, in the period of Ben Hamtzarim. Meaning this is a special time that's Misugel. This is when Am Yisrael says, we recognize the lacking in the Shekhinah in order to restore that. So anybody first, so the Baal Shem Tov says personally, if you're looking for Shekhinah in your life, this is a time, Amish, that's Misugel to be mistaken to have Shekhinah. Meaning this is an opportunity for us to be Megal and more Shekhinah. Isa talks about individually, specifically a person and their pursuit of Tahara and Kedusha in terms of grit and loyalty and integrity. But it means also that Am Yisrael, on a greater level, right, on a holistic level, we're meant to do this collectively. Okay, so this is a special opportunity now for the closest to restore that. Okay, so Torah teaches us values and we have lessons the way we engage in Torah, and the mitzvahs give us rights to do holy things. But the truth is that, you know, when we face the issues of Korban, it's really, really hard to even get our hands around, you know, what can be done and what's the right thing. And we know that none of the generations before had it figured out. And we're a Dar Yosem. Nobody can tell us what can be done. And, you know, it's very easy to be despondent and defeatist and to think that we're in a standstill. And in fact, there are two famous psukim that are contrasted against each other. There's a famous pasuk, the second to last pasuk in Eicha says, Hashivenu Hashem Elecha. Hashem, return us to you, v'nashuva, and we will return. We need you to make the first step. We're stuck where we are, and we're expressing our desire to be reunited with you, but we don't have agency. We're stuck where we are. We need you to make the first step. And yet, there's a pasuk, I believe it's in Zechariah, and it says, Shuva Elai, v'nashuva lechem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says the opposite. Whereas we say, Hashivenu Hashem Elecha, Hashem return to us, and Shuva, we will return. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Shuva Elai, come to me, right? V'shuva lechem. So it sounds like we're in a standstill because we know there's nothing we can do. Yeah, the first pasuk says, return, or the Knesset Yisrael. Am Yisrael says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, return us to you, bring us close to you, and we will return to you. Right? That expresses a fundamental desire for union, but a recognition or a despondency that there's nothing we can do. We need God to initiate. And at the same time, the other pasuk says, Shuvu Elai. Hashem says to Am Yisrael, return to me. Vashuva Alechem, and I'll return to you. You need to make a first step. So on the face of it, these two psukim stand in stark contrast to present a standstill. Hashem says, you make the first step.
But Hashem is making the first step by saying, you make the first step.
And are we not making the first step by saying, Hashem, return to us and we'll return to you? So what's going on? So okay, I, in order to take things a little bit forward, now you should know that I'm by no means familiar at all with the Torah of Rabbi Nachman. But there's this really, really great, really, really short that a dear friend of mine showed me that changed my life. And it opened up a lot of things for me. And in fact, in Chassidus, by the Torah of Hashem of the Magid, this becomes. I'm so sorry. Yes. Okay. I have a friend who showed me a tiny little piece in Kutei Maharan that changed my life and became so important to me and became a stepping stone that opened up something for me, which is a much larger sugya in the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid that has to do specifically with tefillah and what tefillah is all about. And we're not going to get into that today. But this is the kernel, the germ of the idea that can totally transform your avodah generally. But this is crucial for understanding what's going on here and how to maybe solve or understand these two psukim. Okay, it's a little abstract, but maybe afterwards we should talk about it. But it's I'm just going to read it with you. There's a pasuk in Tehillim, and it describes how HaKadosh Baruch Hu bestowed man with certain gifts, how he fashioned him. And it says, and God lessened man just a drop less than Elokim, which means on the face of it, that means the angels, the powers. God is expressed through different agencies, where God becomes multiplicity, right? Lashon Rabim, right? The word Elokim, that means the heavenly, meaning, like a baked in is called Elokim, because they work on behalf of God. They're God's agents. So the pasuk says, God made man just a drop more, okay, just a little bit less than the angelic ones. And honor and splendor, he crowned him with. So Rabbi Nachman says like this. It's amazing how he turns it on its head. Okay, Hine Yadua, it is known. All that is lacking for the individual person, whether it's in your spiritual life or your physical life, any place where you're frustrated, you feel a lacking. That same lacking on the macro is an expression of the Shekhinah's lacking. What you're given in your own personal life, the frustration that you experience and the tragic shortcomings, and when you're frustrated, what you're lacking is actually a micro expression of the Shekhinah's lacking in the world. Shehu bechinat Elokim. That's what we refer to, an aspect of what we call Elokim. Like, we said in the Psukim, if you notice, the Psukim in Bereshis, in the story of Vayeka, it always says Yud Kei Vav Kei Elokim. Whenever we put the name Yud Kei Vav Kei next to Elokim, that means a complete expression from the most ephemeral, ethereal, potential aspects of existence, all the way down to where it's expressed in a world of multiplicity, that the Shekhinah is present. Elokim means that Shekhinah is present. And if we say about Chasrei Me'at Melokim, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu made man just a drop less than Shekhinah, Rabbi Nachman is saying, look at the pasuk to say that Chasrei, that which of human is lacking, Me'at is just a drop of what Elokim is lacking, meaning what the Shekhinah doesn't have. He's inviting us to look in our lives to see it as an expression of a much greater cosmic story. When a person contemplates this and understands that this chisaron that they're facing on the lower level of their life, on the micro, is really just an expression of a ma'at, of an expansive lacking on the cosmological level of where HaKadosh Baruch Hu feels, right? The Melech and the Creator and the Father of the world, where the Shekhinah is lacking, Bivadai certainly yeh lo tsar gadol, you will have great pain ba'atzmut, because we are just expressions of that, right? We ourselves in our lives, we are a goof for the Shekhinah, we are a goof for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's totally up to us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the potential of the neshama in creation that's trapped and needs us to express it, right? So a person could easily fall into despair. And as a result, a person will not be able to serve God. Enjoy. Therefore, a person must answer to himself, must tell himself the following. What is my life? What am I in the grand scheme of things? The king himself, he is intimating to me what he is lacking. Wait a second, that pain, that lacking that I'm experiencing in my own life, whether it's my frustration in a particular aspect of spirituality, or it's the fact that I can't pay the bills, that is all an expression somehow of the Shekhinah's inability. And inability. Meaning even the physical things that a person is lacking, that is an expression.
I'm thinking that also, yeah.
Well, it's like we've been saying, that the Shekhinah is a function of the expression of how the potential of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is manifest in this world. To the degree that the Shekhinah is lacking, that's because we are lacking in manifesting that. Meaning this is a less than perfect world because God only exists in potential, so to speak, even though he is creating the world and being Machadish and he's connected to the world always, but he's essentially invisible. And he leaves us the job, right, to make him visible.
But I thought that God was perfect, that we weren't perfect.
Indeed, but the expression of God in this world, right? We're talking about it's like this. This is why we had an entire session dedicated to this idea. Okay, so it's like this. Your soul is the most precious thing that you have, right? Your soul is meant to come into this world to express itself. You're meant to turn this lowly material world to a world that, even though it's made of coarse materiality and mundaneness, it is elevated because of the fact that you shine your neshama here, right? Yet your neshama cannot do anything without your growth. Total agency in this world is worthy. You're basically, your neshama is an astronaut, and your physical body is the spacesuit, and it can't do anything without that because this is a foreign environment. So, and to the degree that your neshama is not being facilitated by your growth, your neshama is in galus. That's a level of personal galus of the Shekhinah. Similarly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the neshama of all of existence. He's perfect outside of existence. Hashem is perfect, but he made up this whole thing. He set up this whole thing to engage in a relationship with human beings by giving you the ability to make him manifest. His creation is the body of God. That's how God made himself a body and gave us this. One thing he can't do is what he reserved us to do. He's a prisoner to us, right? He doesn't want a puppet show. He says, give me your heart. Your heart. You are real. You are a real player in the relationship. Okay? When we are living the way we're supposed to in humanity, manifest that, this world is completely uplifted to, and it expresses the godliness in everything. And then there's no difference between the neshama and the guf. And there's no difference between the verse, return to me and I'll return to you, and the other verse that says, return to me and I'll return to you. Because it's the same thing happening at the same time because we're in tandem, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. I'm going to get back into have I explained enough of this idea of the Shekhinah to get back into any questions before I go further? Sorry? It's a meat suit. It's a meat suit. It's made out of meat. It's what we say in Yiddish, Fleisch geäugen. You have meat eyes. That's not the way your neshama sees things. Those are your spiritual eyes, right? You are a neshama that was sent into a spacesuit, sent down to this planet. Yeah, that's a way to think of it. Okay. Okay. And God cares more about what goes on down here.
You are a neshama that's in the sense of fear.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. Okay. So remember, Rabbi Nachman was saying like this, is that really what they're experiencing, the very reality of the lackings that they're experiencing in their being is just a reflection of the lacking of Shekhinah and the greater galus of the Shekhinah in the world. And that can naturally turn into a despondency. And yet what a person does at that moment after he recognizes this is to realize that God is intimating to him his sorrows, his problems. Okay? And then, yes?
It's a basically like cake instead of meat. Yes, flesh better.
However you want to relate to viscera and carnality and all those words that come from the Latin that deal with flesh, yes. But essentially, yes. Yeah. So
Hashem is making it into us.
yes, exactly. Your problems are just an expression in this world in a very special individual way of Hashem's problems. Okay, well, let's hold on to that. Let's see where we go, okay? And therefore, a person has to say to himself, wow, let me put my problems aside here and focus on the big picture. God himself, the king, is intimating to me as if, he's crying to me. He's saying he's got problems. The chiyesh kavod gadol mizeh. Is there a greater honor than that? Why would that be an honor?
The king is entrusting us with his word.
Now that means, right, you're taking for granted. I'm going to speak out. That's the point. That if God's telling you something, that means He can't do anything about it, but He's empowering you to. This flips the whole thing on its head. Mitoch kach, through a recognition that God is intimating to you what He needs, kach bo v'simcha gedola, a person can come to a great joy, v'nischachu hamochen shelo, and therefore his mind, his consciousness, experiences a great expansion. And I would say here, that allows him to actually approach his own lackings in a constructive way. Okay, so it's a process that now empowers somebody to change, to fix the lackings that God is experiencing on his level. Vizehu, sorry?
How can you say that God loves anything? It doesn't love it.
Hold on to that. We have to come back to that because that's a fundamental question that this whole piece is raised on. I just don't want to break the train of thought anymore. Just give me a second and we'll come back to it. Okay, I know this is like a revolutionary idea. I know it's like for a lot of people, it's like so we'll discuss it. Okay. Vizehu, and this is the continuation of the verse that says, "V'chavod v'hadar ta'atrei," and honor and splendor in crown. Right? That means the crown means this extra expansive consciousness that he has, that projects outward. That is a result of the honor and the splendor of the intimation of God telling him what God is lacking. Hainu, that means al yedei kavod v'hadar, through the honor and the glory or the splendor that is being imparted to him. Sheyesh lo, that he has, shahamelech ba'atzma, that the king himself, misaper lo hachisar, is intimating to him what he is lacking. Ta'atreo v'mochim chadashim, he gets crowned with new consciousness that allows him now to approach this issue. So this means the point is that what you're lacking in your personal life is an expression of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, what the world is lacking, and Hashem's mission, what Hashem's desire for the world, what the world is. And it's easy. Am Yisrael can very much be defeatist, just like we are defeatist in our own personal lives, right? And what happens is, because we're defeatist, what do? We need to survive. So we sweep things under the rug, and then things pile up. No, but really, we sweep things under the rug, and things become imperfect. And after a while, we are so good at adapting that we live imperfect lives that actually facilitate these problems. And really, the first step is, instead of saying these are problems I can't deal with, it's fair to say I don't know how to deal with them. That's honest. Okay. And then the question is what to do. What do you do when you don't know how to deal with them? But right, to say that I'm meant to go, I mean, sometimes you got to be in survival mode, right? But really, when you bury these things, they become such compounded problems, and they create secondary problems and tertiary problems. Before you know it, Golos is a result of something that maybe you got to rediscover because you're so used to living an impractical life, and you lie to yourself and put this hole up and this patch, and you're living, you're already living in a delusion. And the function of Churban is to say, no, wait, there's breakdown. There is a serious problem. And somehow we're meant to do that in a way that's supposed to empower us to fix it. Okay, now, to talk practically about things, most of the things that we're looking at that are very real problems, there is no real practical way that we could fix them. There aren't. I mean, the question is, what is our locus of where do we have our life and ability to make an impact, to make a difference? Because where we are challenged, it's because we're very rarely, we're challenged in a real way. But I just wanted to, before we get there, because those are practical discussions that everybody has to have, I just wanted to say that, to recap, that the idea of Rabbi Nachman here is to say that, just like the Baal Shem Tov is telling us, that this is a time where practically, by meditating on what's wrong, that is the first step in an empowerment to fix it. And in order to do that, we have to recognize that the problems that we're dealing with are not just our problems. And really, it's an amazing insight and intimacy with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's really the first step that allows us to, empowers us.
And it's like, don't get despondent.
Right.
That's the key.
That's right? The key, right? Meaning all the things ultimately, it's like we said before, there's a Mishnah in Avos that says, Lo alecha hamulacha ligma. It's not up to you to finish the job, because ultimately what happens is all a nace from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Hashem needs you on your level to do everything you can to make a vessel. Okay? So, just because it's not up to you to manage outcomes does not mean that you have the right to sit on the bench. So you have to do everything you can. So even in the, it's so important. Everybody needs, in preparation for Tisha B'Av, really Tisha B'Av is a day where we should have a national conversation. And it's going to take us so much to get there, because one of the major things in Galus, one of the features of Galus, is that we are not a people that can have a discussion with each other. That in itself, there's such a severe breakdown in terms of whether you want to call it sinas chinam or lack of achdus, that, not only do we feel, what are we going to get to a conversation like that? And not only that, but it's very easy when we have that problem to fall into the trap of saying, really, what are the biggest problems that we have today? The problems are that person and that attitude and that thing. Meaning, it's easy to say, I'm doing everything right. What's holding me up is everybody else. So that's why you have all these weird movements in religion today. You have all these kinds of breakaways in Am Yisrael that are like, okay, we're sure we're doing the right thing. So what's holding up the Geula? We just got to convince everybody else. So the biggest mitzvah I could do today, bring the Geula, is to convince somebody else that there's something, whether it's to believe in this or to believe in that, or maybe it's to accept this, or I got to go convince the other person, or they're the people, they're the Erev Rav, it's the Medina, it's the Jews that haven't come to Eretz Yisrael. Whoever you want to blame. Secular Israelis that are tinokos shenishbu, that they don't even, they didn't ever even have the benefit of a Jewish education. They too are going through a Tisha B'Av going, we could live in a utopia, but it's the religious people that are holding us back. Meaning everybody is so isolated. How do you even have that kind of conversation? So like always, it starts off with in the most personal places outwards, right? Where we have the most agency is to deal with ourselves, and also to deal with our relationships and our family and our community and Am Yisrael, and then the whole world. And it's a struggle even to get that, but that meaning we have to start thinking about those things practically. And Tisha B'Av is a day of national conversation. In order to get to that, you have to spend a whole year working on it till you have a meeting where everybody's called for. So really, Tisha B'Av is a time, or the 3 weeks is a time, really, you're supposed to get inspiration or talk about these things to the point where next year you can talk about them the whole year. And then maybe after 3 years of certain efforts of developing certain ways of dialogue, getting everybody to the table, to start talking about, listen, we're giving space for everybody. Let's find what we have in common to talk about what Am Yisrael is and where Am Yisrael has to go. So in order to do that, I'm just throwing stuff on the table here, but really it's just to get us in a mind space, because really everybody on Tisha B'Av should take some time out. It's the easiest day of the year to do that, because every other time of the year, there's stuff going on. In Tisha B'Av, there's nothing to do. You sit down and you make a cheshbon hanefesh, a very real cheshbon hanefesh in your life, what your life needs to be realized, to be expressed, to be actualized. What do you want? What are the good things in life that you maybe have given up on, or like begging for help? Where's the shtina in your life crying that needs attention and needs love and care and nurturing, even if you don't know what to do about it, right? Where do you start recognizing that it's going to get addressed? Okay, and then in your relationships, even things that like we don't even know what to do with, like mental health crises, or relationship breakdowns. It's got to start somewhere. There's always something you could do, whether it's a recognition, a cheshbon hanefesh, a tefillah, but you start working outwards. Get dialogues in the community. Hey guys, you need to accept there's something terrible going on. We need everybody on the same page. This is not okay. And even if we differ on how to deal with it, and we have to recognize each other's needs, and there's lack of good faith in the other person, there's defensiveness, and we don't know that we can get a dialogue because you don't recognize my way of life, I don't recognize yours. Let's all recognize what we all have in common is a problem, and everybody can agree that this is not utopia. Okay, so we just had Shabbos Chazon, and really Shabbos Chazon is named after the Haftarah that we read, which is the opening words of Yeshayahu. And Yeshayahu really is, Yeshayahu's name is often contrasted to Yirmiyahu's name, Isaiah and Jeremiah, because Isaiah, it comes from the word Yeshua, which means salvation, and Yirmiyahu comes from the word, according to most, Mar, which means bitterness, and it characterizes basically their whole mission as prophets, because Yeshayahu spoke generally, the book of Yeshayahu is all about the Geula that is to come, the salvation. And he came before Yirmiyahu, who talks about all the destruction. Okay, and Yirmiyahu's life was very embittered because of all he experienced, and not only was he burdened by this awesome, terrible vision that he had, but he was meant to give it over so to prevent it from happening. And he had to experience in real time in his own life how Am Yisrael refused to listen, and he knew it was going to happen, and he was even jailed, etc. So, what's interesting is we read the one Musar part, which is the opening words of Yeshayahu on the Haftarah of the 3 weeks on Shabbos Chazon. And the truth is, that section ends off beautifully because it says, Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh, that Zion in righteousness and justice will be redeemed, v'shaveh b'tzedakah, and those who return to her in charity, or maybe in justice also, depending on how you learn the words. But it's a very beautiful prophecy, but it starts off with very, very heavy musar and tochacha. And what's interesting is that the whole book of Yeshayahu, which is essentially positive, starts up with the word. This is the vision, this is the chazon of Yeshayahu ben Amos. And chazon, I want to take a moment to talk about chazon and how it's very, very important to have a chazon. Chazon means a vision. Okay, a vision, essentially, we all live in Tzfat. This is very connected to types of people that live in Tzfat and what Tzfat's really about. Tzfat is a place that this is really off topic, but because we live in Tzfat, I'm going to indulge us for a second. Tzfat comes from a lashon of tzaf, to float. It also means to float, tzaf, to float. It also means to be sofet, to gaze from afar. And it makes sense because practically we're in the heights, we're in the mountains, and you have a bird's eye view, you're up, and that gives you expansive vision. But sofim is also a word in Chazal and also in the Navi and Tanakh, in Sefer Shmuel, that describes the Nevi'im. Nevi'im are sofim, they see from afar because they're given a vision of the future, or they're given a vision and potential that hasn't actualized yet. Okay? Chazon is a vision. A vision is a positive thing. It's a picture.
I'll stop people reading all the time.
That's because it's a place of avir, and they're not mechubar lakarka, meaning your strength is also your weakness. You can live a little bit, meaning facts on the ground do not necessarily reflect the vision. And when you're connected to the vision, you have to be more connected to the potential than the actual, because you're holding the space for the vision of what is. And you have to be a little bit, so the danger in being in tzad is to be a balloon. Right? To be a migdal harech ba'avir. But anyway, the point is that a chazon is essentially a positive vision that you have, the potential of how things are meant to be. And that's meant to instruct, right? You're supposed to transpose that over the reality to get a sense of where reality falls short. So you have to start from a vision, right? Right? So everybody really has to, on a personal level, come up with a cheshbon hanefesh, a calculation, a very deep personal, open reckoning, an accounting of where their life is and what's important to them and what's necessary and where things are falling short, where things need more, where they don't match up with what needs to be. Okay? That's so, and everybody has to do what they can on behalf of Am Yisrael. Not everybody, it's so interesting. I was thinking about this, I'll just give you it's a crazy out there idea, but in reference to this short Rabbi Nachman that we just learned, I don't know if, it could be that people here know her, who she is, I don't know, but there's a woman here in Tzfat. If I understand her story correctly, I don't know, she collects money on the street because she has an adult daughter who has mental handicaps, who's in a cult, who has children, and she needs some sort of exorbitant sum that she's collecting for, I think maybe for a task force to go get her something. I don't understand exactly, but there's this woman collecting. Yeah, and it's like, what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave this to this woman? And I always think of wow, do you know how high that is? Because in a way, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, my daughter Am Yisrael is a little bit mentally handicapped today. And she's lost to a cult, right? And she does not have the resources to get herself out. And the Shekhinah is going around collecting, basically, okay? That's a reality that's in her life that is not even metaphorical. She's living that out on some level. That's amazing, okay? You don't have to be a superhero. I don't even know what it means, and I don't even know that's for me. It's just a thought, but everybody at some level, you're supposed to see that your life is playing out where the tragedy is. That's not your tragedy. Hashem put that for you. That's his tragedy. And the reason why you're experiencing that, somehow being aware of that, being devoted your life to understanding that, and living that, and praying and doing everything you can to change that, that's what you can do. Okay, for Hashem. Okay?
What does that mean? It's his tragedy.
Meaning the only reason why this woman is living that life, that is an expression, that is a fairy tale coming into life of what Hashem is experiencing. Hashem has an Am Yisrael who nobody's looking out for her. She's swallowed up by the goyim. She's been indoctrinated and whitewashed and brainwashed by all kinds of foreign notions from a civilization that's meant to battle spirituality and to keep God out of the world. She doesn't have the wherewithal, not the engagement in Torah, not the teachers. We're a Dor Yosem, we're an orphan generation. She has no way of getting herself out. And she doesn't have the power or the monetary resources, to convince the world. Meaning that's what this woman is living with her dog. That's because that's what Hashem's going through. That's just an express. That's kind of like that's a living mashal. And I'm saying I'm inviting us to look at the lackings in our life as those living mashals and say, that's not me. My soul was sent down to be a part of that story, to be a part of that tikkun, to understand that that's what Hashem's going through. That. And I got to do everything I can to get Hashem's shekhinah out of those. Okay? Sorry? A living mashal, a parable. It's a living metaphor. Yeah. Okay? So there's a lot to talk about. There's so many ways you can go. And I want to encourage everybody in their own lives, and maybe in BatMedrash, right, to start finding ways to devote time, taking up some sort of projects that actually do these things, that help people, individuals do that, to help the community, to maybe spread the message. But we need that really, really, this needs to be real. Anybody who knows how to make this real on some level, we got it. Okay, because that's really why every year we have this. And this could go on for a very long time until we get the ball rolling. And you just got to do desperately whatever you can to try to get the ball rolling. It's not, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. But you got to start. You can ask. We can ask, but we need to recognize that's really the most important thing about this whole season. And there can't be more than enough said. So I so much wanted to come here today and have some sort of fancy factor that was going to knock your socks off and show how talented I am and how brilliant the Torah is, and maybe inspire you. I could tell all people I know to go on YouTube and look at it. The truth is, I can't say better than this. And this is really, this is what it's about. And it's not about me, it's about all of us. And I can't say more than nobody today can say more than that about what this is all about. So it's really all practical. So we got to figure out how to do that. Okay? Now, I have some, please.
I headed up two nonprofit organizations in the state, and both of them, they always start with setting a mission statement for what's the big picture of what we're trying to accomplish, what are the tasks we're going to do to get there. It's very organized, and that's kind of what you're proposing on an individual level.
Right. How you define the problem, right, is how you open up for solutions. It's perspective. It's the einayim that we're talking about, right? The einayim see things one way, right? We need to see them another way too, right? Allow the possibility. Now, we can all start. You can make a list. I mean, I can't talk personally. Like I said, they're concentric circles. There's me in my life. There's me and the people immediately around me. Those relationships. There's me and my family, my community. There's me and Am Yisrael. There's me and the world. There's all the things that are wrong with the world. Now, everybody's going to come up with different things that are wrong with the world, right? And really, what's wrong with the world comes from a particular insight, intuitive insight of what's lacking based on the needs that you have, that Hashem gave you, because that's an expression of your personal Anochi. Anochi, God says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am Hashem your God. And all Anochi, I had a teacher once that said that when the Chumash says Anochi, and when it says Ani, it means different things. Ani is a description of me, what I'm going through. I do this, I did this. But when I say Anochi, I'm making a statement about my essence. It's an essential existential statement about myself. I'll give you an example. Yosef HaTzadik, he says, when the guy stops him and asks, what are you looking for? There's an issue stops him. We know it's the Malach Gabriel, right? When he's looking for his brothers. He says, Es achai, my brothers, Anochi mevakesh, I'm looking for. He doesn't say, hey, I'm looking for my brothers. Ani mechapes, he says, Anochi, right? That's a moment where Yosef is giving us a major clue into understanding who he is. He says he's essentially, if he wanted to define who he is, he's one who seeks out his brothers. Okay? Everybody has an Anochi. What's that Anochi? That's your Chelek Elokai Mimah. That's the part of you that's Hashem. Hashem invested in all of us in the Neshama. That's as if it's a piece of him. And there's only one Anochi. Hashem is alone. So where everybody has a piece of Anochi, that's where you're alone. And everybody has a valid, coming from that place. They may not understand it, it may not be expressed, but they have certain ideas about what's wrong. And this is where it gets tricky, because you have ideas of what's wrong and you have ideas of what needs to be done about it. And that doesn't necessarily conform with what makes me comfortable, because maybe I don't share your values, I don't share your approach, right? But the truth is I have to recognize at some point, if we get deep on the most fundamental level, we have to understand, explain how we're all seeking out different aspects of the same thing. I have to make room for the fact that, how does an infinite God express himself in a finite world? Through infinite variety. God could have made one person, but there's all of us. And the Gemara says, just like all our faces, everybody can tell you the difference between a human and a chimp, but every face is different, right? Just like each face is unique, even two twins are unique. Everybody's consciousness, their reality, their mind, the way they see the world is completely different. And everybody's individual mind is a tiny little motor, a generator of a manifestation of a HaKadosh Baruch Hu, an existence that Hashem lives with that person, expresses a whole infinite reality that's unique, right? Hashem is living through everybody's individual life. There's a special connection. None of us have the complete picture, right? Then we have to make space and understand that there's a great, I'll give you, the way I like to think about it. There's a Gemara that says, we have a prayer. The Kaddish is said in Aramaic. And there's a discussion in Tosfot why it's in Aramaic, because there's interesting, fascinating features to prayers that are in Aramaic. For example, Aramaic can only be said with at least 10 people. You can't say a prayer in Aramaic by yourself. Any other language you can say, but not Aramaic. Hebrew you could say. Aramaic, here's the problem. When you pray by yourself, you need an angel to take up the prayer. When you're with 10 people, the Shekhinah is right there. It's not a long distance call. You have 10 people that come together. That's an excellent question. That is dealt with the Gemara in the 7th paragraph of Rechov. I can't get into that, but the question is if the Shekhinah that's present for women is a function of numbers or not. By men, it's certainly an issue of numbers. It's an issue of quantity. Okay, so there's an issue when you have 10. I'm going to explain why. When you have 10 people, immediately the Shekhinah is sure in a way that you don't need an angel to take the prayers. God is directly there, and not only that, but God deals with your prayers are answered because they're not assessed on the personal level. So you can have a personal prayer that goes up because God is not judging the individual; He sees you all as a collective, and you morph into the collective, and therefore your personal shortcomings are not held against your tefillah. Yes. It's not in Aramaic, it's in Lashon HaKodesh. Every word in Anabakov is Lashon HaKodesh. It's not. Yeah, that's a good answer, right? Anabakov, there's not one word in Aramaic. Yeah, you're good. Yeah, you're safe. You can say it by yourself. Okay, so basically, when 10 people come together, Shekhinah comes immediately. Now the problem is that angels don't pedal in Aramaic. They don't feel in Aramaic. So you have a problem if you want to say tefillah in Aramaic and you're saying it by yourself. So the Gemara Tosfos talks about perhaps why Chazal were established the prayer Kaddish specifically in Aramaic. Okay, so Tosfos entertains certain notions, and he says that there's a legend. People will tell you that it's such an exalted prayer, we don't want the angels to get jealous, so we say it in Aramaic so they don't understand. And he says that's not true. He says that's not true because we have so many prayers that we say that they would get jealous, and we don't say them in Aramaic. For example, we use the angel's prayer itself. We say Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. So he says that really it's because it was such a crucial prayer that it says, the Gemara says that the world rests on the world rests on the Kaddish, and Kaddish was often said between Mincha and Ma'ariv at a certain point when the Jews were very uneducated. They didn't even speak Lashon HaKodesh, starting from the period of the Second Temple. So it was a prayer that, in order for everybody to understand, it was in Aramaic. So they wanted everybody to understand it. So that's why Tosfos said. I wanted to suggest like this. I wanted to say that there's a good reason why Chazal, Dafka, they made it Aramaic, that it could only be said in the and that's because the main point of the Kaddish is to say the following words. Yehei Shnei Rava. Yehei Shnei, his name, God's name, should be great. Li'olam, le'olmei olmaya yitbarach, right? From one world, from this world to the next world, right? It should be blessed. There's different ways of reading that, different minhagim. Some people say, Yehei Shmei Rabbim Yitbarach le'olam olmei olmaya. Some people say, le'olam olmei olmaya yisbarach. But the point is that is seen as such an amazing prayer that Chazal say anybody who says it with full fervor can totally put themselves in the words. A decree, a bad decree, an evil decree of 70 years can be ripped up. Okay? So the point is that there's something about Yehei Shmei Rabbah that Chazal, I believe Chazal wanted that this could only be said with 10 people. I'm going to tell you why. There's something amazing. What's amazing about saying that God's name should be blessed, that God's name should be great? I could say it right now, and it's not like saying Kaddish. Yeah. So I think that there's a higher level of Kiddush Hashem. When I walk, the whole day, I live life with God in my head. And the conception I have with God is the God that's involved in my life. And I'm pretty myopic because all I know is what's going on in my life. And that's what God's involved with. I can't spend the same amount of time thinking about everybody else in my life and how God's involved with them. So really the God that I'm familiar with is the God that I'm talking to, I'm thinking about, experiencing it, right? And suddenly I walk into shul and I'm with 9 of my peers. And I know that each one of these people now came just like me with their own personal story. And we're all coming together. And in this moment that we're all coming together, we realize that we're each empowering each other to address a higher level of God than we could by ourselves. Because suddenly I'm recognizing that there's a Rebbeinu Shalom who's expressing himself in this person's life and this person's life, no matter how different they are, but we're peers. And I understand together, we can say, Yehei Shmei Rabbah. We're talking about a greater sense of God that should be blessed. Because now I can be afforded this moment, this activity, I can be afforded a heightened or enlarged awareness of the God that I'm addressing. It's the God that's expressed in ways that I don't immediately understand. I don't relate to. There's a piece of Anochi in that person and that person and that person. Okay? So I'm mentioning this idea because in a very real way, in order to have a dialogue, before we get stuck, before we start with it's that person's fault and it's that person's fault, or even if we can accept or agree with what's missing, there's no way, right, we'll agree on what has to be done. So first of all, it's very important to know that to give room and space and good faith that a person, everybody else has to be in the conversation and everybody else does have a valid point of departure. Okay. So the other thing is that it's very, very, very important. It's very, very important not to, this is part of a greater conversation about Tzinaspinam and Astos. Okay, so I just want to say like this, going back to the practical, I think everybody can make a list, when it comes to the big issues of Am Yisrael. When it comes to the big issues of Am Yisrael, we know that the big 3 things are Am Yisrael, Torah, and Eretz Yisrael. What do I mean? That is Am Yisrael on the level that Am Yisrael should be? We don't even have an Am Yisrael. We are divided in so many different ways, in so many different lines, in so many different fronts. Is Am Yisrael even together, let alone who they should be? So we have a lot of issues in terms of what does it mean that Am Yisrael should be Am Yisrael. We have a lot of issues with Torah. Is Torah being expressed the way it should be? Even the people that have Torah, there's so much Am Yisrael doesn't have Torah. Where's Torah in the world? Torah has a lot of issues. Eretz Yisrael has a lot of issues. There's plenty of people that don't live in Eretz Yisrael. The people that do live in Eretz Yisrael, is this the Eretz Yisrael we wanted? Is it predicated, the way we do things here, on manifesting the reason why, meaning the Eretz Yisrael that Hashem gave us? So there are plenty of things right then and there that we could brainstorm about and start to, get some traction. So there's plenty of ways practically where you could sink your teeth, okay? And it's important for all of us to have that big dialogue about those 3 things, but on the personal level, you can start right now with those personal things. That's my offering for today. Okay, is there any comments or questions? This is so practical, like go home and start thinking about it. Take a walk, something, please. We all need it. Yeah, okay, what would you like me to explain? What is Am Yisrael? What is Am Yisrael? Who is Am Yisrael? Do you know how many people are part of Am Yisrael that don't even know? You know how many people are walking around right now and they're not manifesting, they're not even conscious that they're from an Am HaNivchar and they have that they're from the chosen people, and they have the power of a titan to move the world. Like, isn't it could be just somebody who's born of a Jewish mother, doesn't even know. That should be so tragic to you. People you don't, that should be tragic, because that's tragic to Hashem. What can you do about it? I don't even know if you can do anything about it. That's not the point. Start up with saying, hey, is Am Yisrael, right? Now, think about the person who identifies himself so strongly with Am Yisrael, he's so active, and he's doing all the things, or saying all the things, or positing all the things that Am Yisrael is that they're not. There's plenty of people on behalf of Am Yisrael that are saying all kinds of things about, or, Am Yisrael that's not Am Yisrael. That's a big tragedy. I don't know. There's people who have self-appointed spokespeople on behalf of Judaism that believe that Judaism supports all kinds of political and social efforts that don't, you could take the idea of tikkun olam free from halacha. You could take, I will go further. All the people that are mamish totally devoted to keeping Torah and mitzvahs. I got tons of friends, tons of peers, some, who are struggling very much. They're totally devoted to Torah and mitzvahs, and they have huge struggles with it. So I'm saying wherever you look, there's work to do. And there are questions to ask. And saying this is a sign of a breakdown. What am I missing that maybe it can approach this totally different? Or, and if I can't, where can I feel more broken about it? Down to Hashem to make traction. Wow, what is Hashem telling me about this, about how he feels? Maybe that'll give me an expansiveness to begin an approach. But that's what I mean by Am Yisrael. I mean, we could do this with anything. It's an exercise. It's a meditation. And it's important to do. And if you make it a public dialogue and you keep it up, maybe it'll snowball and somebody will, critical masses will happen, critical moments, critical discrete, but the point is it's practical. Maybe there are people that are trained to facilitate these things. Maybe there's a guy who has conflict resolution who can be employed on some sort of massive panel of delegates from every community that want to talk about the future of Am Yisrael and how it has to be represented in policy. I don't know, who knows? But certainly we could do this in our own life and with our families. Think about things that we've never been able to address with our spouses or with our parents or with our children. That's where we got to start.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
It's a kind of Hashem it always says Ani Hashem. So
Are you saying what does it mean over there?
Like in so many places it says Ani.
Ani is a fair description. It's true. But you know that all descriptions of God never talk about his essence. But his essence is his essence, meaning he is Anochi. Other than that, everything is pretty much Ani. Right? I mean, Ani is an external way that the Anochi is expressed. When you say Ani, you're also talking from an Anochi point, but it's a local, it's an outside expression of that. Anochi goes to the essence. A human being can make a statement about themselves as Anochi as a particular thing. That's what they're all about. Right? Why does Hashem say, we mentioned this, I think. Hashem says in the first of the Aseret HaDibros, when he presents himself to Am Yisrael, he says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Asher Hotzasicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. I took you out of Egypt. What an introduction. That's so sweet. What about Anochi Hashem Shebores Kol Ha'olam? You're introducing yourself. Use your credentials. You saved me from Egypt. Okay, but who are you? I'm Hashem who created the whole world, right? That's what it's all about. So the point is that Hashem is presenting himself in the context of a relationship. It's personal. Hashem's saying that I am. What I am is in how I'm involved with you personally. That's related to me. Yeah. The bris with Am Yisrael was a personal bris, and it started off as built on that. Meaning Hashem says, "How would I want you?" Of course, I'm the creator. Yippee! I'm the creator for everybody else too. I'm the creator for all the nations in the world that aren't at us. Why is it relevant to you? It's personal because I'm Anochi that got involved and saved you, right? So it's, yeah. Is everybody totally inspired to go home and make some phone calls? Yeah. Or make a website? I'm kidding. Good. And keep the dialogue going because we need each other. It's about making room for other voices, allowing a fuller expression of reality to be incorporated in your vision, to give space for the other voices and for everybody to come together and get a big picture, right? And then see, what it's like. Because, so much when I'm hurting, obviously in a relationship, the other person's hurting too. And there's plenty of things that they have to share with me. And if I would have known, if I would have realized, things would have changed. And I may have grievances and I may have legitimate grievances, but those would easily all go away if we both recognize that we want to get past them and we have shortcomings and actually we were hurt. There were reasons why we responded and we just want resolution. If we can effectively communicate like that, so that's.
So basically what you're saying that our status, let's say, the two status, different with our relationship is personal.
Yes. We're the only ones that they can't do anything to make any change in the world. All the stuff that you see, in order for the world to fundamentally change in a real way, and that means to spiritually change, it's all up to us. Everything that you see is an expression of what we are and where we are holding vis-a-vis that mission. And Hashem empowered us in a way that he didn't empower any of them. If a non-Jew does a sin, it does not count on the great scale of the world of whether it justifies the world or empowers the world. When you do something in the privacy of your home, that makes a difference to the whole world.
And if you explain that to a goy, then
You don't have to. There's no need. Why explain that to them? Because the guy knows that deeper than you. The guy is resentful of you because he also lives in a world down the tubes, and he knows that. And you're just rubbing it in because you're saying, I'm the one that can do something about it. The world stinks, and we can change it. And you can't. Like, why would you tell them that? They know that. You're just basically indicting yourself. I'm sorry. Yes, I just want to say, there's a halach in Shulchan Aruch that a person has to have fear of judgment on Rosh Hashanah. They have to have fear of judgment, and there's no halacha like that for the Bnei Noach. They're allowed to go to the beach on Rosh Hashanah. For the Noachites, there's no halacha that they have to have a fear of judgment on Rosh Hashanah. They can go to the beach. And yet, the judgment that they get on Rosh Hashanah, the judgment that they get for the whole year is also on Rosh Hashanah. They get it too. How come they get to go to the beach? We have halacha. We have to be. So the halacha that we have to be scared of judgment does not mean that we have to be scared because it's for real. It's that really the whole din of the world in Rosh Hashanah is a function of our relationship with Hashem. And we have to understand that we are the determining factor and we are the heavenly court, the lowly court on Rosh Hashanah that determines what God's going to do. And therefore we have to have a fear of judgment to actually meaning it's accepting that we are the determining factor. So a guy, there's nothing he can do about it. He gets it in the mail and there's nothing he can do. He might as well go to the beach. Meaning we are the determining factor, and that's why we have to approach our avodas if it's real in order to empower ourselves to do it. Meaning a guy is irrelevant here. The guy will be so happy, so happy. If you care about the guy, they'll be so happy when you fix things. Yes.
So I know that in the hearing you talked about
Yes.
I want to know if you could say anything more about, just elaborate a little bit. I've actually been having this your infection, and it's actually clearing up slowly. The reason why I'm often been very happy. So it's the bigger picture, and it's also just.
Okay, so I could just say a sentence or two to begin. Okay, I can't develop this all, but so much. But if the eyes are all about seeing good, which means seeing the way God sees, and that's also a big discussion I feel like hasn't been addressed adequately yet, or about seeing Hashem's positivity in the world, then hearing is about hearing Hashem in your life. Now this is a maddening thing because you can start obsessing. I know Hashem's sending me messages. I don't even know where to look and how to interpret them. What do I do and all that? Don't go there. Just commit yourself to hearing more Hashem, and that in your hearing that there should be more goodness, more instruction, that you're open to receiving. Hearing is actually a very high thing. In some ways it's higher, it's the highest. They say that it's the olam of tshuva and the olam of bina. You have two ears. One of them, your right ear, is called bina, and your left ear is called tuna. And the tshuva, in order to speak the words of God, the Navi sits and he listens, and he waits for the voice, for the call to come. So Good luck. Something to work with. Okay. All right, everybody. We're gonna rip our hearts open and to ourselves, to each other, to Hashem, and we're gonna make something happen, right? Okay. Yes.
You said that the Maran says that you should fall into this phrase.
Yes.
On the other hand, you have to say that we need to feel aware of the lacking of the children
Right.
and of problems of the children.
That will make you very sad, right? So where does the happiness come from? So this is the critical point. This is what Rabbi Nachman says, switches that happiness, that sadness to empowerment. This is the point. Recognizing that which is making you sad, right? Which you are lacking, which the Shekhinah is also lacking. You know this because God wanted to tell you. Because God is telling you, the reason why you're aware of it is because God's telling you, that means that there's something for you to do about it. That joy is empowerment.
Taking the responsibility.
Yeah, meaning it's not your problems and you're going to God help me. Like that's true. But realize also that Hashem has problems and He's coming to you. So, the next part of this idea, which I can't get into now, but this is really, the Baal Shem Tov says so much that if you want your tefillah to be answered, you cannot ask, once you recognize what Rabbi Nachman said, you can't ask for your personal things. You have to ask for the big things, and those personal things will change. I'm gonna, okay? Sheniske, okay.
Thank you for all the
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very appreciative.
Can I make an announcement? I actually started a crowdfunding called Single Mothers Unite. It's to help